All right. So yeah, thank you everybody for coming. We really, really are excited to have you here. The more people who come, the more fun it is, I think. So we enjoy having you. And what an excellent night to be here. We have 3 really great presentations. So I'm excited to hear all 3 of them. But of course, we want to start off by thanking our sponsors. We've got Thinkster.io. We've got lots of great Angular courses on there, including a free Fundamentals of Angular course by Joe Eames. And then ngConf, always a big supporter, and Hero Devs. So big thank you to them. And okay, there we go. If you are here, then that means you are agreeing to follow the code of conduct. Eric, could you put that in the chat for us, or I can in a minute? But
yep, already on it.
Okay, basically everybody be kind. Let's have fun and not do anything that would be unkind. Pretty simple. And please engage with us all night. We're going to keep the chat line open. If you would like to be promoted to panelist, though, just raise your hand or send us a quick message. Let us know. Eric and I will bring you through, just like the others that you can see here. It's just kind of preference if you like to be on camera or not. You can even just share your mic if you don't want to be on camera. So one or the other, but just kind of a fun way to engage with us. And then also just to kind of preview, there is a new Angular podcast that's coming out at the end, hopefully, of next month, maybe early July, but we're going to shoot for June. So it is a new podcast all about the Angular community and just developer life in general. And you can start to follow the podcast at ngxp_show on Twitter. And you can get a preview of the website at ngxp.show. So just kind of a heads up, it'll be a pretty fun podcast to be listening to. And then also we have the Reliable Web Summit coming up in August. This is going to be a brand new experience brought to you from NgConf. So it's not like Enterprise NG, which is coming up in November. That'll be also an excellent event, but this is actually a couple months before then in August. And this is actually going to focus on 3 specific areas. So it's all about, just kind of like the name says, keeping your apps reliable, but it'll be focused on scalability, testability, and maintainability. And just kind of giving you a preview of the talks that will be released here pretty soon. It'll be a very excellent conference. There are some really, really wonderful talks that are going to happen. So I definitely encourage you to check that out, reliablewebsummit.com. And early bird pricing is going on. You guys, it's only $99 until June 1st. So I for sure recommend that. Gives you about a week to go get tickets for just $100. It will be very worth it. It's 2 days long. And yeah, go check that out. And then tonight's prizes, again, are brought to you by our sponsors. So we have a 6-month membership to Thinkster, gives you access to all of their courses. And then also we're going to give a grand prize of a ticket to that conference that I just mentioned, to the Reliable Web Summit. So that should be a big prize. That'll be really cool. And then we're going to take a minute. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but I think we got all the news. Eric, did we cover all the news? Am I missing anything?
No, I think you got it all. Good job, Brooke.
Okay, cool. So then I'm going to stop sharing my screen and just kind of turn it over to everybody, because right now we want to take some time to let you, if you are either looking for a job or would like to tell everybody about a job opening that you know about at a company that you're working for, now is the time to share it. We would love to help you guys connect, just do some networking. But yeah, the stage is kind of yours. Please be somewhat brief though. Don't take too long. Maybe keep it to about a minute and a half, and then we'll just kind of let everybody take their turn and go from there.
I'm going to throw in while you guys are getting your names into chat so we know what order to get you guys in, I just want to say we are always looking for prize sponsors as well. So if you guys are interested, or you have a company, or you as a person have a product or a book you wrote or something like that, and you'd like to have a minute in the, I think it's like a minute to 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes. I can't remember what we had. Then just hit us up. You can DM us. But without further ado, go ahead, Ankita.
Hello, everyone. So glad to be here and so excited to see everyone. I know I mentioned this last month also, but we still have openings at my workplace. I work for Dell SecureWorks, and we are working on a cybersecurity product. And it's really exciting because we use all of the latest technologies, Angular Material, NgRx Component Store also. And yeah, and GraphQL, and it's all exciting. The openings, we currently have around 5 openings for front-end engineers for Angular. So if you're interested, I will drop my email ID in the chat below, and feel free to reach out to me.
Thanks, Ankita.
Excellent. Yeah. Is there anybody else that has anything they'd like to share?
We have Riley Bird next.
Riley. Okay, nice. I'm glad you're watching that, Eric.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. This is my first time coming to the Angular meeting.
Oh, nice. Welcome.
Thank you. So I'm a third-year software engineering student at Newmont, which means that I graduate this September.
Hooray.
And yeah, I have internship experience at Symantec, Moog, FPS Gold, and I'm looking for a job.
Very cool.
How is there? Do you have like a? Well, I was gonna say like a.
You want to throw your Twitter
or something? Yeah, Twitter.
Into chat here. If you don't have a Twitter, go make one real fast and throw it in and be like, "I'm gonna get hired."
Yeah.
By the way, we
have a Twitter, but I do have a LinkedIn.
There you go. That's great. Even better, actually. We actually have had 2 people find jobs through here. I'm not going to expose them, but this has been successful so far. And if there are more people who have found work, or even if it's part-time, let us know. We just love to hear.
I will expose myself that I found my job here in the Angular Community one.
Yay.
Yes. Thanks, Alex.
Again, go read his story on the NgConf Medium. It's a good story. You'll hear about it there.
All right, next up is I had this. Michael DeMille.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for having me. It's great to see all you guys. So I work for a company out of Lehigh. It's called Limbo CMNS. We announced this last time as well. But we're growing a lot and always looking for new talent. So what we do is basically it's computerized maintenance management system. So it's all maintenance of facilities. And yeah, we've been doing good the last little while. So if you want to hit us up, we're always looking for good talent, and I will put the link to that in the chat. So thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for being here. All right, we got Michael Callahan next.
Alrighty, let me show this one real quick, and then I'll put the I'll put it in the chat. We are currently lining up interviews for this one. I've actually know the people on this team. It's a great team to work on. Mostly web development, a lot of Angular. So if you are interested in working for Mickey, like I do, then click the link that I'm going to paste in real soon.
Who would be a better boss than Mickey Mouse?
Not Donald.
Yeah, that's true. He can be kind of tricky though. So I don't know. All right, well, thanks, Michael. Goofy.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing anyone else. Oh wait, no, never mind. I'm not seeing anyone else, Brooke.
Okay. All right. then I think with that, I'm going to share my screen again. We'll just kind of jump right into our talks. So let me do a quick preview here of our first speaker. There's a fly or something in here. All right. So our first speaker, our lightning talk, is Jay Bell, who is the CTO and co-founder at Trellis.org. Trellis is a social enterprise based in BC, Canada, and they build an all-in-one fundraising tool for charities and nonprofits. Jay is an avid open source contributor, including projects such as NX and Nest, and enjoys building on top of NgRx to expand its functionality. Before COVID, Jay was actively planning, hosting, and speaking at events. This included Startup Weekend and mentorship programs for youth in his community. He currently leads a growing team of 6 developers and is eager to learn more about software, leadership, and building a welcoming culture. So Jay, with that, we'll let you take over, and we're super grateful to have you here.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Brooke.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay, I'll share my screen. Here we go. We all see that?
Yes.
Zoom decided to put everything in the way. There we go. Okay, so I'll be quick, 5 minutes or less. Auxiliary routes in Angular. What are auxiliary routes? They're also called named routes or secondary routes. So what a lot of people don't know about Angular is, when you have a router outlet, you can actually have multiple router outlets on the same page, and each router outlet can be using a different routing tree. So, when you import your router module and you go, for route and then pass in your array of routes and stuff like that and nest them and load children, all that kind of stuff, well, you can actually define those to be in specific router outlets. So what we're looking at here is very basic. I'll share the code for you afterwards, but red's the primary router outlet, so it's not named. It's just the router outlet tag. And then the blue is the secondary outlet, which is currently not activated. So this is just on the main route, localhost 4200 classic, right? How are these configured? So what we're looking at on the left here is, our normal configuration. Our base route shows the primary component, and then our secondary route or auxiliary route or named, whatever you want to call it. People seem to use all 3 words for it. You just pass in this outlet property, and that correlates to the name property on the router outlet selector. Now you have 2 router outlets on the same page. So as long as your paths are all configured correctly, when you navigate to that secondary outlet, which we'll see how you do that in a second. Well, you can see the router link right there. When you click that button, it'll navigate us to the secondary outlet. How does this look in the URL, you might ask? Well, it looks super funny, but it essentially goes / and then in parentheses, the name of the outlet and then the path that it routed to. And you can stack these. Like you can have 2, 3, 4, 5, as many as you want. And then the URL just gets super complicated. It's pretty ugly, and it's a lot harder to type in, but you can do it, right? So as you can see on the little screenshot we have there, after we click the go to secondary button, blue now is activated, and we have both our primary outlet, which is just the base path, as well as our secondary outlet, which is S outlet secondary, activated as well. So why and when would we want to do this? Well, cases for this are, like a sidebar, or you have your main content and you have some kind of a secondary content that is routed to based on some other parameters within your application. What we wanted to use it for, and why I started to look into this, was we have like a website builder within our product for people to build fundraising pages, right? And then we have a sidebar that pops out, and in that sidebar you can do any number of things. There's like 20 or 30 different pages within that sidebar. Back before I started looking into this, we had it in one big mat stepper. That was incredibly hard to maintain. It was very slow. IDEs pretty much ground to a halt when you tried to, edit it, add a new selector, a new, module and stuff like that. And this dependency tree just massive, right? So I was like, well, there's got to be a better way to do this. I spent probably a week and a half or 2 weeks trying to get a secondary outlet to work in there. What I found is that the documentation is very minimal for it. They don't work perfectly with nested routes and refreshing sometimes for some reason. And I wasn't able to figure out why. And the docs weren't super clear on that. So sometimes when you have like, /manager/page1 and then a secondary route, a router outlet that was activated and you refresh the page, it would just like error out and take you to the base route. So I don't know, maybe it was the setup with the application. And then sometimes when you tried to navigate from one secondary outlet to another secondary outlet, it would say that the router outlet was already activated. And there's not very much help on the internet for that. So complex, applications might not want to take care of or make use of this. It might be more for simple things like, say you're doing a demo for it like this, or you just have like two sides of your page, two different pieces of content on the page. You're not doing complex routing. You're not building like an enterprise application kind of thing. So I would suggest it in very simple cases. I would definitely not suggest it in complex cases, but it's interesting to see that it's actually able to be done. I wish the Angular docs had more documentation on it because I did spend a lot of time looking into it, and it's pretty cool. It seems somewhat powerful, right? So what I did instead was I built a library called Rx Dynamic Component, which will essentially do the same thing, except it uses component factories to load components in, based on pretty much any source in your application. So we do it based off of an NgRx store. And I think this is the talk that I gave at NgConf. So there is a recording of me talking about that on the NgConf YouTube that I will find and post in the chat later. But yeah, that is secondary outlets. They're pretty easy to set up in simple cases, but they get a little bit complex in complex cases. So I will send this out to everybody after so that you guys have the resources if you want to take a look into it a little bit more. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to at me and ask. And I would also love to know if you were able to, solve the problems that I ran into so that I can update examples and maybe contribute to the Angular docs to make them better for the person that needs to go try and figure this out next time.
I didn't know they were called auxiliary routes.
Yeah, so I'm not actually sure what the official name is. I just like when you try and find resources for them, it's either the articles talk about auxiliary or secondary or named. So I don't know. That's what I mean. The documentation's biddable, but the router can do it. It's just no one knows that.
Awesome.
We use auxiliary routes also in the way we use it, and that's what we call it also.
Okay.
I guess that's the name. And the way we use it, which it's proven to be quite beneficial for us. The way we use it is that we have a ton of data display, but if you want to view the details, those details open in the auxiliary route like a panel, and then you can close it and it goes away. So it's similar to what you said. It's just super convenient because if someone wants to like open a peek preview of something, just open it in the route, and then if they want to look into it further, they can open. So we use the same feature store for like preview and the full details version of that. Mm-hmm. So it's like super easy to, if the user wants to open it, just glance at it and like, no, this is not what I want. Versus if they want to go to the full page, they end up using the same store, just a different view for it. It's super interesting.
That's awesome.
Once we figured out how to use it, like the use case for us, we just adapted it everywhere in our app.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I'm glad someone was able to figure out how to use it in a production application, because I probably spent a good week and a half. And like this demo repo that I have going on here was kind of like my playground to try and figure out how to get it to work. So what I have is like the basic case. So I'm glad that someone was able to prove that it's usable in production.
Yeah, it definitely works, and I would definitely recommend it. Once you get the hang of it, it's very useful to adapt in your app.
Sweet.
But did you just use it? Sorry if I could chime in. Did you just use it as like a detail, like you were saying, and Ankita, I'm hoping I'm saying that right, as a details pull out? rather than having like multiple navigations in that secondary layout. Because I think that's where I had run into problems. It sounds like that, J-Bell, that's kind of where you were trying to do additional navigation in that secondary.
Yeah.
Where it sounds like, at least in your use case, Ankita, it was just kind of a details view, and then you close it. Like you're not navigating again in that auxiliary route. Is that correct?
The details view is actually another route. So the same route, you can hit it in a new tab also, but also in the auxiliary route.
But you weren't navigating within that details view. Like you weren't navigating to this auxiliary route in the details view, and then within that details view, navigating it again within the details view, right? It was kind of just like that one.
Yeah, so
level.
like if you're like on a parent route, then you can use the auxiliary route to open the details route, or you can the same route you can also open it in a new tab. But yeah, so you're kind of navigating to a new route within like the table page, but in an auxiliary route. So you're not navigating from the like main table, but you're still navigating to a new route. It's a little confusing unless you see it and try it.
You should write an article, Ankita.
Yeah, or I might just help like build upon Jay's repo.
Yeah, getting a more thorough example of this that other people would be able to reference would be really awesome, because I don't want anybody to have to go through what I went through. And it was like right in the middle of a massive project we were building too. And it was like the blocker. I was like, I can't launch this giant product until this is done. It was so stressful.
Yeah.
I need more questions for Jay.
I got a question. Yep. So Jay, when you're running multiple routes, how does the browser handle the history on that? Does it kind of intermix them, or does it basically just always track the main route and it just kind of ignores the auxiliaries?
I believe it mixes them. So if you were at like home and then you went to that S outlet secondary and then you went back to home and you clicked back, it would take you to S outlet secondary again. Okay. I believe that's how it works. Is that right, Ankita?
Yeah, that's how it works. And also in your router link, if you do like forgetting the exact thing, but if you do like preserve or like merge something, if you merge your parameters, then even if you're switching between different auxiliary routes, the browser history maintains it. So you can switch between auxiliary routes just using the browser back button.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. You can also clear the auxiliary route by passing an undefined or null where that secondary string is. So that would just take us to /, just for fun fact for everybody.
All right, thanks.
No problem. Any other questions? Sweet. Well, thanks for having me. Well, thanks for listening to me anyway.
You're assuming that we listen to you.
That was an assumption that I made. You were correct, Eric. Awesome. Well, I will stop sharing then and let you guys take it from here.
Brooke, you're muted. I don't know if you know this.
I'm like trying to shuffle like 5 screens right now. So I'm like lost. I'm lost in all of my tabs and I'm not used to having a million.
I know exactly what you're experiencing right now.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Let me set us up here for our next speaker. And actually, I think I have him out of order on my slides. Okay. So I think it's actually Mike Hartington, right?
I don't know. I always go by what I put on the website. Let's see. Mike Hartington, yeah. But before you do that, I just want to note we have 4 GDEs, and I could be missing some because they are growing. Actually, 5. I'm 5. I just saw Michael Dowden's face and remembered. There are 5 GDEs here, and I just want to thank you all for coming and representing the GDE program. So thank you. 2 of them are speaking. So
definitely, yeah. Thank you. Okay, so Mike, I've learned that he has the Mike Hartington cult. As someone at one of his previous webinars so named themselves, but we love having Mike join us for any event. I think it's always fun to have him. He's a great speaker. Mike is a developer, Angular GDE, as Eric just said, and Ionic developer advocate who's been working in the mobile landscape for most of his professional career. His favorite part of being a developer advocate is working with community members and helping them succeed at mobile. In his spare time, he's an aspiring woodworker, occasional musician, and a craft beer lover. So, Mike, I will turn it over to you.
All right. Not quite sure where that baby face photo of myself came from. Must have been from the depths of the internet. All right. So just get a confirmation. My screen share is up and good, right?
You are good to go.
All right. A year of doing virtual presentations. You think I figured it out by now?
No, as I was just saying, no.
2 screens, 3 screens, it doesn't matter. I won't figure it out.
Exactly.
Cool. So yeah, we're going to talk about a modern web dev's approach to developing for mobile. You can find me on Twitter afterwards. M Hartington basically everywhere on the internet. So if you can't find me on Twitter, just look for the guy with the beard. I say that, but there's like half a dozen of us all in the same community. So look for the one whose name is M Hartington. And if you've known anything about me or have followed anything I've done, anything I've talked about in the past, I'm talking about cross-platform development again. It's one of my favorite subjects because it is something that constantly is changing, even though people think it is a topic that has either died out years ago or is just, is it that one thing that we did forever ago that totally didn't work out? I'm here to tell you that no, time has kind of improved and made cross-platform development actually pretty awesome these days. But to understand that, what are the key concepts? So cross-platform development focuses on these principles, being able to take your app, write it once, and then run it anywhere. You shouldn't have to adapt or rewrite your code for different platforms. You should be able to take your existing skills, target all these different platforms that are available, and then just have one code base or one abstraction for targeting iOS, Android, Electron, desktop, PWA, what have you. So these are the key principles that, we try to focus within. And, if you were to just hear all these principles and hear my 30-second pitch, you'd probably think that this all sounds great. But if you've worked in any real life agency or development shop or even large enterprise, this is not always the case. There's a lot of reasons why people might not want to go down these roads, might want to look at other solutions that are not very webby, not very focused on JavaScript, maybe using different languages. So I want to start off by just figuring out, why is this not the norm and why are people not building cross-platform? So if you think about a little history lesson here, we're talking about native SDKs. The original iPhone SDK was released in 2008, a year after the first iPhone. Android SDK kind of followed afterwards. We're looking over 10 years of iteration and improvements to the platforms. We just had Google I/O. Watch some of the Android tracks. They are constantly getting better and giving Apple a run for their money in terms of native development. But not every developer was psyched about this. Some developers, they held on to HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and said, I am never letting go. Objective-C, no thank you. Java, you may have Java in your name, JavaScript, but you are better than Java. I will die on that hill. So developers had all these different options. A couple smart developers got together and started this project called Apache Cordova. Its name is it's a story all on its own. So if you've heard it anywhere before, we're just going to call it Cordova. So they really pioneered the idea of write first, run anywhere, or write once, run anywhere. And they're probably the first option out there that really took this idea and ran with it. They had this mission statement of, why don't we just make the web an actual, competent platform to develop for. Well, years before we even got PWAs, or PWAs were even, coined as a term, they were like, why not get a file system API? Why not get a camera API? Really, really incredible stuff. And they did it by polyfilling the web view in JavaScript in native code. So you had the JavaScript APIs to target these platforms, but you were still just writing, a web app at the end of the day. And probably the most interesting goal that they had was to cease to exist, which is a pretty meta goal when you are an open source project. But I guess the idea was to just reach a point where the web got good enough and they are no longer needed, which I think is a pretty nice way to have like an end of life for your own project. Architecturally, when we're talking about this cross-platform stuff, we're really thinking about this kind of a diagram where we have your web app loaded up in a custom native web view that proxies calls coming out from the web app, and then from the web view, it sends it to this bridge layer, which then handles out calls to, say, the camera, the Bluetooth APIs, file system access, what have you. As those results come back in, they serialize it, pass it back to the web view, and then pass that data back to your web app. So you could call camera, take a photo, get the camera data, normalize it, serialize it, send it back to your web app, and you'd probably get like an object with either, a base64 string or a full file path. Different APIs for approaching this. This is really an interesting approach that they took, where they actually polyfilled the navigator object inside of the browser. Why they did this, no one knows. No one was there when they wrote it, especially on this call, but we can assume that they had good intentions and they decided to say, we will eventually get a camera API with a get picture method. We're going to have an on success and on failed callbacks, because we were back in the callback days. No promises, no async await. And we had some kind of configuration to, handle, how good of an image do we want to get? Do we want to save it to the camera, to the photo album? And then we could handle the success and failure outside of our components. If we want to do anything pretty fancy, we had this odd implicit delay about trying stuff on startup. So if we want to, say, call tracking or geolocation APIs as soon as the app started off, we probably had like a 500 to 1,000 millisecond delay on that call, just because of the way things were architected. So this led to the perception that it's not very fast, it's kind of slow. And I can understand it. It's a limitation of how everything was built and how the system works. What it did well was that it encouraged a growth of platforms. You could build for iOS, Android, WebOS, Tizen, BlackBerry. Anybody? Anyone have a BlackBerry phone? Electron, Mac OS, Windows 7, 8, Windows 10. You had everything. Windows Mobile, even the OS that should have, and it really encourages community growth. They really wanted to bring the community and not just make it a project that one group or one maintainer worked on, but something that everyone collectively contributed to. Less than ideal is that it used custom tooling for everything, and this was before the time we had Node. So their first initial releases were using shell scripts and that you had to run and make sure that permissions were set right. Once Node got there, it was kind of better, but we still had this weird custom built module loader, which if you ever want to write a module loader and you want a great example of how not to write a module loader, look at their module loader, because it is not the best. And it's this weird code base that has definitely not aged well. Project structures were pretty volatile. So if you were to make a change somewhere in the projects, in your dependencies, you're probably going to have to blow away your native platform targets and then rebuild. Or if your coworker clones the repo, they might not have the same information as you. So you're in this weird situation, which how do you maintain like handling entitlements unless you just commit it to version control? But that was not what was expected. And it treated those native build targets as, those native platforms as build targets, meaning that after you were done building, you had no need for them. Delete them. We can get rid of them, which led to a lot of issues. If you go searching through GitHub, you'll probably find some really good examples of why this ended up not working well. So that's kind of, the Cordova approach. There's other approaches like, compile to native or abstracting native UI through JavaScript. Probably going to pick on one if I need to. Pick on one. We're going to talk about React Native. Even though we're at an Angular meetup, it's good to know what else is out there in the world. React Native took it in a different approach where they said learn once, write anywhere, where instead of having to have write once, run anywhere, they said, no, here, learn one abstraction, and that is how to compose your UI, and then you could build for all these different platforms. They had this promise of a truly native app, but at the same time, all the UI got generated at runtime based on JavaScript. So is it truly native? Who knows? It's this weird uncanny valley of runtime generated UI versus compile time generated UI. Skip the slide there. Architecture is pretty similar to Cordova, where you had a JavaScript app that just got loaded up in a VM, so V8 or JavaScript core for iOS. There's a bridge layer, proxied out calls to the device APIs, and then serialize them back. So second verse, same as the first. These things just kind of follow the same patterns over and over. The code for this, for working with React Native, obviously we're using JSX. If you don't know JSX, it is just a way to express UI using JavaScript that looks like XML or HTML. So in here, we're just generally rendering out a div with a paragraph tag that says hello. Pretty nice. We get some built-ins coming from the core library, but everything is expected to be in this React paradigm. If we want to touch anything else, like say a camera, we probably are going to require a third-party dependency. Not always great. There is yet another thing that you have to maintain and update. So yay, nay, who knows? What it did do well, though, is that it gave you direct access to a native project and to the native APIs. If you were ambitious enough and you want to build your own API for something that was released in whatever latest and greatest iOS version was shipped, you had full access to it. You could build out that API, copy some pseudocode from Apple's docs, and then you would just have to create the bridge layer from JavaScript. And the docs are so good on how to do that that people actually did that, and the community created some pretty cool abstractions and plugins. And the abstractions for these were really generic, but in a good way, that they didn't try to cover every use case. They left it up for you to figure out, is this abstraction right for you? Yes, use it. If not, build upon it, which I think was a pretty interesting approach. Less than ideal, though. You still had a lot of specific knowledge and quirks to know about how the architecture worked out. You left in this weird, uncanny valley where if you have a performance issue, is it on the native side or is it on the JavaScript side? How do you debug that? Debugging native apps is an absolute nightmare. You think debugging JavaScript is tough? Try looking at a hierarchy of different views inside of Xcode on a MacBook Air. It's not fun. And if at the end of the day, you were still only left with a native app and you basically were kind of told, you want to develop for the web? Here's some community projects, varying degrees of support and releases, and constantly under the beta alpha tag, which is great for bleeding edge people, but try telling that to your manager that we're going to depend on an alpha release library that was released 8 months ago. it was just not ideal. And this is a not extensive list. There are other solutions out there that also did the same thing. Some of them you probably have used in the past. I've used things like Accelerator or Titanium, I think it was called at one point. But all of them kind of had their own quirks about them that were just not ideal. And here's where, the kind of, dev advocate kind of, there's got to be a better way. And I really think I have a good way to help you build better cross-platform apps and build better mobile apps. And that's what this project called Capacitor that we at Ionic have been working on. So Capacitor itself is two parts, a JavaScript library and a native runtime. We give you a JavaScript API for interacting with these native features, but then also a native runtime for you to package them all up into a native app and then ship to the stores. So we give you all the flexibility that you would expect from a web developer approach, but also all the flexibility from how a native app would be expected to run. Native tooling for project maintenance. So we're making use of things like CocoaPods and Android libraries. So any dependency updates or version updates aren't kind of in this weird flux. You're just using the native tooling that is already provided for these platforms. And I will argue that is the right abstraction because it gives you all the benefits from either being one step away from native and one step away from web. Kind of meets you right in the middle. Architecturally, it's a very similar approach to how things worked in Cordova. The only difference is that this web view and this bridge layer, the abstractions get created right away. So there is no delay. There's no implicit delay of waiting for that connection to happen. It's instantiated before the app even boots up. But with that, we get our Angular app loaded through the Capacitor runtime. You can target a progressive web app out of the box without any code changes, an Android app, and an iOS app. So all this kind of brings everything together just by using this one library. Developers hate me that I have this one weird trick to deploy to multiple platforms. Key features, it doesn't try to focus on the UI. So if you want to build something, you need to have your own UI library. Obviously, I think Ionic is pretty good, but you could also use Angular Material. You could also use, whatever library exists out there. There's there's more than a handful of library choices you can use. If you're expecting things to match the web APIs or the standard APIs for, say, access the file system, geolocation, it's not going to be a one-to-one match. That's how we can swap out implementations without you even realizing it. So I've done a lot of talking, and I kind of wanted to code for a little bit. So we're going to try to do some live coding. We're going to see how this goes. I will have a repo afterwards if things go terribly wrong. So I have an app over here. It is basically just a note-taking app where I have a bunch of notes, placeholders, a modal for me to edit a note, create a note in this rich text editor, hello world, and then I should be able to save it and then present that and render that into my main screen, and then persist this as the file to the file system. So we're going to create all this real quick. We are using dark mode. This is just, showing off at this point some features of Ionic, but you don't really need to know anything about that. What we do need to know is that we have Capacitor already set up in this project. Like I said, this is package JSON. We just have, your standard Angular dependencies, but we have this Capacitor core and a bunch of different libraries that you could use with it. So things like haptics, keyboard, the platform for iOS, and the one that we're going to look at is this file system API. So let's go to, let's say, the home page, and what we're going to do is actually just swap out how we're loading these list items. Because right now we're just loading a static, ng4 0 through 3. What we're going to do is just first import a bunch of things from capacitor itself and the file system plugin. So this is going to be the file system, some directory, and redir results enums. So just that way we have everything typed, strongly typed. And then inside of our component class, we're going to have this NgOnInit, where we're going to request permission to read from the file system because we are good developers. And also the platforms will not allow you to access them if you don't ask first. And then we are going to brace yourself for some copy paste. I promise. It's the only way that we'll be able to get this done in, record time. Where we have this make directory, read directory, and then init file system methods. So make directory is probably the best place to start, where we're just saying, hey, file system, make a directory. We're going to start it off with a prefix of notes. And the directory is going to be, mocking the documents directory. So because we're going to try this on the web first, this isn't being Safari. We don't actually have a file system API that is, worth anything. We basically have some file system API that was created in like the early 2000s that no one ever updated or removed from the browser. Yay, Safari. But what we do have is a IndexedDB instance. So we can start to mock this out inside of the browser without having to really worry about it. So what we're going to do is also declare a property for notes. We're just going to make a directory if it doesn't exist. We're going to read that directory, so scan that directory for any notes that could exist. And then once this is all done, we're just going to sort them out and render them to this component. So let's just make sure everything looks good. We're going to save, go to the HTML for this. And if I recall, let's see, we'll call it notes of notes. And we'll just render out the note inside of this. Now, nothing actually exists over here because I haven't actually set that up. So to do that, let's go over to our little edit modal over here. So that way we can actually add a note to this. So we'll go to, nope, don't want to make that change. We'll go to the edit page component. So the actual component logic for this. And what we're going to start to do is actually go into this NgOnInit. And then we're just going to do some pretty standard stuff. We're going to check to see, hey, has this component been given a name or any data that we want to access? I think, let me just import everything. And because we're using TypeScript and it's all just autocomplete to glory, we can just let this do its thing. So we're just going to check to see if this file system exists, if we wanted to edit this later on. If not, we can just, go on with our day. What we want to do is say, hello, insert text here, hello world. And then I want to be able to click this save button. So let's go over, and again, I apologize for copy and paste. I normally don't do this, but it's the only way to get this done in time. We are going to actually just say, hey, if this file system has a name, call the file the name. If not, we're going to generate a new name, basically saying note date.now.txt. So we'll save this as a text file. We will write all this out to our file system, writing it to the documents directory, making sure that it is UTF-8 encoded. let me add this little bit that I forgot. Let's see, private model controller. I'll type it as, if I can type today, model controller, and then we will save it. Failed to compile. Oh no. Okay, I know what that is. It is not close. It's dismiss. Not the end of the world. Let's try this. Edit. Hello world. We'll click save. Oh no. What happened? I know what happened. We will just go to edit page, HTML, and actually call save, and not just say save itself. Run this, insert text, hit save, and we close. We have the file system, we have all that stuff stored, and if we go to say, where is it, storage, we could, see all of this stuff in here. We just actually can't. Now, here's all the document data, and let's bump this up real quick. You can see we're storing it all there. We just don't actually have any way to render it because if we reload, there's the data right there, but we don't actually have any way to update that as we close the modal. So what we can do is go back to the home page, and then on modal close, we're just going to do this dot init file system again. Quick and easy. Since everything is pretty safely typed, and we know that the create directory is only going to happen if the directory doesn't exist, we can say edit number 2, save, and then that note automatically appears right in there. Now, all this is great and working well in the browser. Let's try to actually get this to potentially break and run inside of a real device, more or less a simulator, because I don't have my device connected at the moment. So we're going to do Ionic cat run iOS, and let's be ambitious. We'll set live reload in here. So this is just going to set up a little live reload server. So as we are iterating on our app, we can actually deploy to the real devices, and it'll go to iPhone 12. It's going to build all these assets for us. We're going to get everything. You can see it's updating, finding all the plugins that we are using, all the native dependencies that are required for this. It's going to copy the actual web code for us, serve the app. So we are actually running ng run app serve. So all things that are good for the web developer, they're already in here. Generating application bundle. Now we're just playing the waiting game, and I don't really have that great of a monologue. I can't just fill the time, so I'm just going to awkwardly try to say that I'm filling the time by pointing out how terrible I am at small talk. Just gonna let this do its thing.
You're terrible at small talk. That's not what I heard, Mike. I've heard you.
I don't know where you heard this from. Who's been lying to you? What kind of people have you been hanging around with?
Mike, while we're waiting for that to build, how robust is the enterprise Ionic offering compared to like the open source? Because we built an app with Capacitor, which was awesome. I loved it. But we ran into some of the progressive web compatibilities with the calendar module. We ended up having to use the Cordova. So I'm just wondering kind of like the differences on your enterprises versus your regular.
Come talk to me afterwards. We can get you sorted out and figure out something. I actually don't work on the commercial side of things, so I don't have a good answer at the moment, but I can at least get you in the right direction or connected to the right people.
Okay.
I promise this is going to be great.
It is cool. Technology is cool.
While this is running, what we're going to do is just kind of wrap up some of the slides so that way I don't go over my allotted time and I'm not taking away everything from the second best mic. Don't worry, the first best mic is Mike Brocky.
That's right.
Totally
He's
forgot.
number one, tied for second.
Oh, wait a minute. There we go. We just filled some time enough for the simulator to show up.
Good job getting that question in there, Stephen.
So we have our app running right here. Let's see. We'll open up the notes. I don't know why this is. There we go. Hello world. We'll click save and boom, my notes rendered. This is actually saved and persisted to the file system. So if you were to actually inspect this, you're going to see this get rendered out to this app's own little document sandbox and be part of the app's data. So if you were to say delete the app, but not delete all the additional data, the app's data would still be there, notes would still be there, and you'd have all that to pick up from. So great stuff there. Back to the slides, and we can wrap this up. So I just showed iOS, but we also have support for Android and, like I said, Progresso web apps. And if you are somebody who is interested in Electron, we have community support for this. They've been doing great work and working on this, with support from us. They recently hit RC, and we're excited to see how this goes. Pretty aggressive version support. I say aggressive because you tell this to some people, Android 5 and up. That apparently is very aggressive. In iOS, we're a little behind on this slide, but at least like the latest -2. And to add this actually to your project, if you just want to try it out, create a new Git branch, install the CLI and everything, and then run cap init. You can actually get started and playing around with this to see what it's like. As I said, it's just not an Angular solution. It's also available for any project. So if anywhere down the road you unfortunately are not working with Angular anymore, no worries. You can reach for Capacitor and we'll still have your back. And this brings us to the concept of how we're describing this as web native, because it's actually taking all the benefits of native development and web development, and I think really throwing out this whole hybrid app approach or terminology and just throwing it out and really improving on it. So parting thoughts, Capacitor, it's a better approach to building cross-platform apps that has been long overdue, giving you the right abstractions and giving you a solution that works no matter your technology stack. So if you have any questions, happy to take them. If you think of them later on, tweet at me. Happy to go over anything. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. Always appreciate it. You always do such a good job. And I have to ask, do you have any idea who named Capacitor? I just think it's a really clever name.
So Capacitor actually had a second name or one original name called Avocado.
Okay.
That we were it was an anagram for the original project for Cordova. Close enough of an anagram. But no one would give us the avocado handle on NPM. So we had a pivot and they were like, oh, how about this idea? We call ourselves Ionic. Ionic's like, a molecular bond. Let's go with the electricity theme. What bridges two technologies? And, that's the capacitor logo is the actual electrical symbol for a capacitor.
Nice. Well, I have to say, it's fun to come up with, as we've been promoting any event that you've ever done, because you've got the flux capacitor, and then Star Wars just started using the capacitor in their Bad Batch cartoons. So, it's always fun, But
glad to be of assistance.
Right. Cool.
With things that I don't even create.
Thank you.
I'm waiting for you guys to create Isotope, Mike.
The Isotope.
I keep trying to tell him we should make something called Resistor, but apparently that has not gone over well in clinical trials. Everyone keeps saying, why would I want to use something that I feel like I have to resist?
Potentiometer. Let's just keep going.
Sure. A lot of opportunities there.
Perfect. Okay, well, let's keep on going with our presentation of the mics. So let me share my screen again really quick here. We have Mike Ryan. And Mike is also, as Eric was pointing out, a GDE and software architect. He works for Synapse Wireless and is one of the co-creators of NgRx. Let's see. At Synapse, he is building industrial Internet of Things applications. And see, he is an open source. He's a core member of, like I said, the NgRx team and open source organization building high quality reactive libraries for Angular. So hopefully I didn't ruin that too much, Mike, but the stage is all yours. And
All right.
yeah.
Let me get my screen shared here.
Okay.
Okay. Hopefully y'all can see my slides okay. So first, thank you for having me. And I'm going to start off on a bit of a grumpy mood because I really, really dislike chart libraries so much. I've had to build so many charts in my career as a UI engineer, and it's just always such a headache for me. At my first job, I worked for the Army Game Studio, which made video games for the US Army. And I had such particular designer. His name was Brad, that wanted these crazy animating charts. And they were such a headache to try and build using AngularJS at the time. And then at another job, I worked with this guy named Brandon Roberts. You might know him. He helped me create parts of NgRx. And he would write these charts that were just so hard to maintain and seemingly broke every time I upgraded Angular. I'll never forgive Brandon Roberts for that. So please let him know if you ever meet him that he doesn't know how to build charts either. And what I've come to learn is that there's just so many things that can go wrong when you're actually building with visualization libraries. So first is that getting the design just right can be a really painful experience. They kind of have like canned themes most of the time, and then it's really up to the API of that charting library to get those charts looking just right. It's also super difficult to keep them working across upgrades of the libraries. As libraries upgrade or update, some of the parts of the design change or part of the interactivity model changes, and things just break on you unexpectedly, and they're really hard to write tests around. And I think both of these things are the case because these visualization libraries tend to be really configuration heavy. It's kind of like, here, pass me this big config object, and I'll hopefully paint a chart for you that interacts the right way and matches the look and feel of your application. So I was staring down the barrel of this really big project where we were going to try and help industrial facilities understand their energy usage inside of their factories to help them make optimizations or improvements or reduce costs. And it just had so many custom charts in this design that I'm like, I cannot do this with another charting library. There's no way this will work. I really want to find a more sustainable way to build them. But making my own charts seemed really terrifying. Like rolling your own, that sounds pretty scary too. So what was I supposed to do? Just buckle down and use the charting library or face my fears? And I decided it was time to face my fears and learn how to build charts from scratch. So before I tell you how, I'll just reintroduce myself one more time real quick. So my name is Mike Ryan. You can follow me everywhere at Mike Ryan Dev. And I'm a software architect at Synapse, where I help industrial factories tackle sustainability. I'm a Google developer expert, and I'm one of the co-creators of NgRx. So if I'm going to build my own visualizations, what do I want to achieve with them? Well, first off, I want to build on top of skill sets that I and my team members know. That way we can all contribute to and make these visualizations a success. Second, I want the sky to be the limit on customization, right? Like, this is my charting library. I want it to look and interact the way that I want it to. And then I want it to be built to last well into the future. Like, it'd be great if I could write some really good and robust tests around these. So I was looking at these goals, it's like, okay, what's a technology that I could go maybe integrate or learn or leverage for the charting library? And that's when I had to overcome my first challenge. A new challenger approached, and that was SVG. So if you're not familiar with SVG, SVG is an XML-based tool or language for drawing visualizations. And since SVG is based on XML, just like HTML, modern browsers actually have really good full support for it these days. So what it looks like is in your HTML document, you can just drop this SVG tag anywhere in your HTML structure, and you can start to use SVG elements inside of that SVG tag. So here I'm drawing a circle, and it's got a couple of attributes on it. It's got an R for the radius, and then it's got a center X and a center Y to specify where the circle is meant to be drawn. And now we can draw this circle as part of this SVG image. And since it's XML based and browsers have really great support for it, you can actually style SVG documents using CSS. So I could whip out some CSS, target that circle element with the circle selector, and then I can use the fill property to actually change the fill color of this circle. Again, since it's XML based and has really great browser support for it, you can make these fully interactive. You can use document.querySelector to get a hold of one of these SVG elements, and you can do all the same kind of DOM-like things that you might be used to make these things interactive, handle click events, so on and so forth. And again, because it's XML based, just like HTML, it turns out that Angular actually has really good support for SVG. It's not something you're going to find on the documentation website. It's kind of like a secret or bonus feature of Angular, but it works really great out of the box. So let me show you how. So here I've got a component, and it's using a little bit of SVG in the template. There's some things that are a little bit different. Whenever we want to use an SVG specific element, we're going to need to put that SVG prefix in front of the tag name. Angular is kind of trying to make sure that you're using either valid HTML elements or components that you've declared. By using this SVG prefix, we're letting Angular know that, hey, don't look in the HTML namespace for all your valid element tags. Look in the SVG namespace for valid element names. From there, we can use standard Angular syntax to bind to different attributes of this SVG element. And using Angular style encapsulation, we can go ahead and style this circle using Angular's built-in CSS support. So that's cool. We can do a little bit of SVG inside of our Angular apps, but what about building like custom SVG components? How can we use Angular to extend the schema of SVG? Well, it works, but there's one small hiccup. SVG does not support custom element names. It's pretty restrictive in the elements that you can actually use in an SVG document. So there's no JavaScript we could write to really make this work. We can't just like create a component called myCustomCircle and slap it in our SVG document. This isn't going to really do anything. The browser's going to totally hiccup on this. But just like HTML has div elements, SVG happens to have a similar kind of generic element called the G tag. Like div, it's just a generic grouping of children elements, and it's the perfect hook for us to build custom SVG components because they support custom attribute names. And so we can use a combination of the G element plus a custom attribute name to start building Angular components for SVG. So let's build a custom circle component using this idea. So here I have a custom Angular component that works in SVG. And the first part, and this part that looks the strangest, is going to be the selector. So instead of having an element name here, what we're going to do is we're going to use that G tag, and we're going to specify that we're looking for a G tag with this attribute on it. And we're going to slap that SVG prefix at the front of it to let Angular know that we're looking for a G element in an SVG tree with a myCustomCircle attribute. It's a little funky, but it's going to give us the same behavior of custom components in HTML, except this one works in SVG. From there, our templates now need to speak exclusively SVG. We're in SVG land, and so all of the elements in here are going to be either SVG elements or custom components built to be used in SVG documents. We can use inputs and outputs. This is just an Angular component at this point, so we can pass in data to this component and use it within the template of our SVG component. And we can still use CSS selectors to style parts of this component. So everything's working really great. And this has given me a really good idea of like, hey, SVG is really drawn for visualizations. Let's use this for charts. So I can take this custom circle and I can slap it in an SVG tag, and it's going to work. It draws that circle, draws my custom circle, and I can interact with that component API. So now we've got a little bit of the principles down of SVG plus Angular. Let's try to build a chart using this idea. So now I have a new designer, but he's still particular about the way he wants his charts to look. And he has delivered to me this design. It plots a sparkline of movies released by year on this card. And when the user interacts with the sparkline, we want to show a marker for the piece of data that they're interacting with, along with a tooltip showing how many movies were released in a given year. There's some small design details I want you to notice. So first off, there's an animation for that marker. When the user hovers over it, the marker fades in. Additionally, beneath that spark line, there's an area that's got this really nice subtle gradient to it. These are the kinds of design details that I have found are really tricky to get right with existing charting libraries. So we're going to try and make sure that we're handling all of these design details as we build this out with Angular. From a hierarchy perspective, we're going to build out a tree of Angular components to support this. So we're going to have our root component, and it's going to draw our sparkline chart that I showed you in that design. This sparkline chart is going to be responsible for fetching the data and passing it down to a couple of visualization components that we're going to go author. So we're going to author 3 of them. One is the area component, which is going to be responsible for drawing that really nice gradient background. We're also going to have a custom line component that draws the spark line. And then finally, a dots component that draws the markers that the user can interact with to get it context about that data. So before we start writing them, we have to start with the data. All these components are going to need to pass around a common data type. And so I'm going to create a little TypeScript interface called a point. And it's going to have 2 properties on it, an X and a Y, that are both numbers respectively, that are going to give us the data that we need to actually plot out this chart. So let's take a look at the data fetching mechanism and see how this works. We're going to, in our root component, inject a custom Angular service called the movie service, and it's got a method on it called getMoviesByYear that's going to return to me a live observable of all the movies released for a given year between a date range. And this is a live set of data, and so every time that data is coming through, I want to map the results that I'm getting back from the service into that point interface I showed you before. So on our sparkline, the x-axis of our sparkline is going to be the year in which we're looking at, and the y-axis is going to be the number of movies that were released for that given year. We're going to assign that to the points property in this component, and we're going to pass it down to our sparkline chart using the async pipe, providing those points to the points input of that sparkline chart component. So from the top, we're fully reactive. We've got a live set of data. We're dynamically mapping it into a set of points, and we're passing it down to the top of our sparkline chart component hierarchy. So we've got our root component set up, and we're passing points down to the chart component. And now it's time to talk about the scary part, plotting the data. Watch out, there's gonna be a lot of math at this point, but I'm gonna try and walk you through it step by step. And it sounds scary, but it's actually really not too bad once you see how it's going to work. So imagine this rectangle is the card that we're going to plot all of our data onto. The first thing we're going to need to do is establish a coordinate system. So in SVG, the top left is actually the start of the coordinate system. That's where your 0, 0 point is. And then you have a positive y-axis going down and a positive x-axis going to the right. So our card is 500 pixels wide by 120 pixels tall. So top left will be 0.00 and bottom right is going to be 0.500, 120. And what we're going to need to do is whenever we get in a point that represents one of the data points from that movie service, we need to figure out where this data point needs to be drawn on this card. So here, the X is the year 2007, and 2007 probably goes somewhere right here in the middle of this card. And the Y is 538 movies, which is probably needs to go somewhere on that point on the Y-axis. So if we can find a way to map that X and the Y, we'd be able to draw a point on this card. So what we need to do is we need to convert from years and number of movies released into the custom coordinate system of our chart. And what we're really talking about in visualization terms is our domain and our range. So domain is the data that we need to plot, and range is the set of coordinates that we're going to plot that data into. So here our domain is the year 2002 to the year 2017, because that's the span of years that our API is going to give us data back for. And our range is 0 to 500 because the width of our chart is 500 pixels wide. And I always get these terms backwards. So the little way that I have learned to remember it is the D in domain stands for the data that is the input to the chart. And the R in range is for result, what I actually want it to look like once I've passed in all that data and drawn the chart. So to map it, we're going to need to write what's called a scale function. And what a scale function does is it's going to take data in from our domain and calculate where it belongs on the range. So what does this function look like? Well, we're going to create a factory function that, given a domain and a range, returns a function that can plot some value in that domain into the range. So how is this math working? Let's break it down line by line. The first thing that this function is going to accept is the domain, and I'm going to pass it in as a tuple. So the first element in this is the minimum number in my domain, and the second number in that tuple is going to be the max value in the domain. And I'm going to do the exact same thing for range. I'm going to pass in the min range and the max range to this function. Once I have it, I can calculate the size of domain. What is the total size or the span of the values within that domain? And I can calculate that with some subtraction. I can subtract min domain from max domain. And I can do the same thing for range. I can find the size of the range by subtracting min range from max range. Once I have the size of my domain and my range, I can now return a function back to the user that, given some value in the domain, figures out where it belongs in the range. So to do that, we're going to use a little bit of math to kind of figure out the percentage, like where, if I have a value in my domain, what's the percentage at? Like where's it at in that range of values? And then I can take that percentage, apply it to the size of the range to figure out where it belongs now in the range. Okay, it's a lot of math. I'm going to go through it one more time. Let's pass in some values here so you can see exactly how these numbers are working with this function. So in our example, the domain is going to be from the year 2002 to the year 2017. So our min domain is 2002 and our max domain is 2017. The width of our chart is 500 pixels. So the min range is 0 and the max range is 500. Now, when I go calculate the size of domain, it's 2017 minus 2002, or 15 years. That's the size of our domain. We're charting data across 15 years. And the size of our range is 500. It's 500 pixels wide. So now if I pass in the year 2006, I should get its position in pixels on the chart itself. So I pass in 2006, and it turns out it's about 26% into my domain. And I can apply that 26% to the size of my range to figure out that, hey, the year 2006 should be drawn at 133 pixels on my chart. And so that's how we can create scale functions that allow us to go ahead and plot our data. So let's use that in a sparkline chart component. Let's actually draw that sparkline using our linear scale. So here I've got an Angular component that's going to draw the sparkline. And the way this is going to work is it's going to have an input for all of those points, all the data points that the root component is passing down to us. And I've got a really simple utility function in this project that searches that list of points and gets me the max x, the min x, the max y, and the min y. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass those to create scale functions for both the x-axis and the y-axis. So using my create linear scale function that we just demoed earlier, now I have functions that will let me plot my data into each of those axes. From there, I can map across all of my points to compute where they actually belong by applying those scale functions to the x and y in the data that I'm being passed. So I'm going to save the full demo for a second. We've got some of the math down for drawing the line, but let's also go ahead and draw the dots at the same time because it's the exact same procedure. I'm going to take a list of points that I just computed in that previous component using my range functions, and I'm going to draw a circle for each of those dots. And since this is Angular, it's pretty straightforward. I have a list of points that I have done the calculations for, and I can just use ng in this SVG component to draw a circle for every single point in my set of data. So again, I've got a list of points. I'm going to pass it in this component using the points input. And then I'm going to use that ng to print out a circle for every single data point in that list. Finally, I'm going to take my sparkline component and I'm going to drop it into an SVG element, passing in the points that we've computed with our scale functions. I'm going to run the app, and hey, look at that. I've turned my data into a set of points that are being graphed in my visualization. So we're plotting the data, and that's looking really great. But we've just got the dots right now, right? We also want that really nice spark line, and we want that gradient beneath that spark line. So we're going to need to learn something a little bit fancier than just circles. We're going to need to learn how to draw paths for the spark line and polygons for the gradient using SVG. So let's start with paths. SVG has a path element, and it has this attribute called D that stands for dark incantation to draw shape. I'm kidding, of course. It's not a dark incantation, though it looks a little bit like it. What it does is it takes a list of path commands that instructs SVG how to draw a path. And the syntax for it might look a little intimidating, but if you kind of break it up into chunks, it actually is pretty straightforward. What you're going to see is it's going to take a function and then any number of arguments supplied to that function. And you can repeat that syntax over and over and over again. So you can see beneath here, I've got a list of path commands. Let's break this down one by one to figure out what's happening. So the first command or first function is the M command, which stands for move. And this starts or moves our point to a position so we can start drawing from that position. The next function or command is the L command, which stands for line. So wherever we are currently, we're going to draw a line to a new position. So we started at 72.0, and we're now drawing a line to 145.25. We repeat this a couple of times to draw out a shape, a few more lines, and then we're going to close it up with the Z command. I have no idea what Z stands for. If you know what Z stands for, I would love to hear it. I'm always interested in your best guess for what this Z thing stands for, but all I know is that it closes the path. I think the best answer that I've ever heard is that it zips it up. And so we've zipped up our little path and we've closed it and we've drawn a shape. And actually we've drawn the outline for the Angular badge.
Maybe it's
so
like
let's take this.
You know what I mean? You get from A and to Z. It's got to be the end.
It just closes it up. So let's take this path command structure and let's write a function that's going to generate all the commands needed to draw our spark line. And again, like our sparkline component, we're going to work on a list of points. And what we're going to do is we're going to use array destructuring syntax to get at both the first point and every point that comes after it. And we're going to split it up so we can interact with the first point by itself and the rest of the points as a list. And it's important that we split up this way because we need that first point for the very first command in our move or our command sequence, which is going to be that move command. So we need to start at the first point. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use the map method on the rest of the points to draw lines in order from each point to the next point. So this will get us the path commands to draw a line. Now let's build an Angular component that uses this function. So like the circles, we're going to write or use this function to actually render to the screen. And the way this one's going to work is we're going to have two properties on this Angular component. One is the D property, which is where we're going to store the computed path sequence. And the other is the points input. So every time we're past the points, we're going to calculate the path commands needed to draw the spark line. And we're going to do this using a setter so that as we get a fresh set of points from that top level observable, we're computing a new set of path commands each time and storing it on that D attribute. Finally, we're going to bind that path command to our path element in our Angular template. So we've got this sparkline line component written. Now let's go drop it into our chart. So I'm going to go back to our SVG element where we've already got our dots, and I'm going to shove in our new line component alongside it. And if I run the app now, we've got both the circles for each of the movies and a really nice spark line going through each of the dots. We're almost there. We have just one more thing to really tackle, which is going to be that gradient beneath that spark line. So we can actually build off of that get path commands for line function that we just wrote it for the previous component, except this time we're going to wrap it up to get the path commands for a full polygon. And the way we're going to start is we're actually going to start with all the same commands we use to draw this spark line, right? Because that draws us the line. But now what we need to do is we need to actually finish this polygon. We need to go down to the left and back up again to create a full polygon from that spark line. So we're going to start with the commands for the line, and then we're going to use that same get bounds utility that I mentioned earlier that just finds me the min values and max values in my list of points. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the max x and the max y to draw another line to the bottom right of my chart. And I'm going to use the min x and the max y to draw a line to the left of my chart. And then I'm going to use that z command to zip it up, close it off, and finish my polygon. Now that I got my path commands for a polygon function, I can go write a new Angular component called the sparkline area component. And it's going to look very similar to the sparkline line component. Just like last time, I'm going to have a property called d to store the computed d string, the path commands. And then I'm going to have, again, a points input that accepts that list of points. But instead of calling get path commands for line, I'm going to call our new get path commands for polygon function to calculate that list of path commands that actually draw me the full polygon. I'm going to pass the d string into the attribute of the path command, and I have my sparkline area component. From there, I can use some CSS to draw a gradient or some SVG gradients in here to style it up. And once I've done the gradient work here, what I can then do is go back to my chart component, and I can slap in my sparkline area component to finish up my chart, go run it, and I'm pretty much there. I've got all my dots, I've got the line going through it, and I've got the really nice gradient beneath that sparkline. But we're still missing one more thing. If we go back to the comp that my designer gave me, the dots aren't actually supposed to appear all the time. They're only supposed to fade in when the user interacts with it, and then we're supposed to show this really nice tooltip beneath it, showing you how many movies were released in a given year. So how are we going to do these tooltips? Well, we can get halfway there pretty quick by updating our sparkline dots component. And we're going to use the CSS, specifically the CSS on that circle, to set the opacity to 0. And then when a user hovers over it, we're going to transition the opacity to 1. Because we're now writing it ourselves using SVG plus CSS, we can use all of our CSS skill sets to add this nice hover capability to each of those circles that we're drawing in our dots component. So if I run the app now, as I interact with it, I've got this nice hover behavior, but I still don't have my tooltips. Okay, so tooltips. How are we going to do that? Well, first, let's go make a small change to our point interface. In addition to an X and Y, I also want to capture the string that I should show for the tooltip for each data point. I can go back to the root of my application where I'm interacting with that movie service and getting movies by year. And in addition to mapping each of my results into a point, I can now create a tooltip message for it. So I'm going to say that for my tooltip, I want to show how many movies released in a given year. And I've adhered to that point interface. So I've got it. Now we need to actually draw those tooltips. So you've seen all the math that goes into drawing that spark line, that goes into drawing the gradient, that goes into drawing the circles. What's the math look like to draw the tooltip? Well, it's just Angular, so I can just use that tooltip. I can use the directives and Angular components I've already got available to me. I don't need to do anything fancy here. I can pull out an Angular directive that was already available. So I'm going to use the mat tooltip directive from Angular material, use my template, run my app, and now I've got tooltips rendering for my chart. I fully implemented the chart that my designer gave me. It looks the way he's designed it. It interacts the way he wanted it to work. So what were my goals for improved visualizations? Well, I wanted to build on top of existing skill sets, and I think I've achieved it. Now, if you're an Angular developer and you learn just this little bit of SVG, you can be really productive because now you're building your charts using Angular components and CSS. And since I get to use CSS and custom Angular components, it's endlessly customizable. I can make this interact or look or work any way I want to. Really, I'm just limited by my Angular skill sets at this point. And since it is just Angular components, we've really removed that config-heavy piece of traditional visualization libraries, and we can use modern testing tools to test our Angular components out to validate that our components work well into the future. So if you know Angular, you can make visualizations. You just need to learn a little bit of SVG, and you can really go far by building your custom visualizations using Angular plus SVG. You can download the slides and the working example at github.com/mike-ryan-dev/reactive charts Angular Meetup 2021. The slides are also there in PDF format, so you can pull those down and reference all the code samples that I just showed you. So I really appreciate it. If you have any questions, feel free to tweet at me at mike-ryan-dev.
By the way, this is the real Mike Ryan, not a recording of Mike Ryan. I know it was such a good presentation that it's hard to tell, but the proof was I asked him a question and he answered it real time.
You're too kind. Thank you.
Unless we prearranged that, and you never know.
I think everyone's minds are pretty blown right now, Mike. That was really fantastic.
Just like, I want to know as a count, but it's too hard to do counts with Zoom, just how many people knew that you could make an SVG component. We got one hand.
He was not long. I saw him during the talk. He's like, yeah, I'm tracking this. I knew he was getting it.
Okay, so there are at least 4. I didn't know. I never made an SVG component. That's really cool.
Got some people saying yes.
Hey, Mike, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So I did this a number of years ago, but where I ran into problems, and maybe the browsers have changed all this, is adding mouse over events. Once I hit about 100 SVG elements, it drove the browser down to a crawl. So I'm just wondering, have you seen the browsers change this? This was like 3 or 4 years ago. Have they improved in performance?
Yes, SVG performance can get really tricky. I've built in some pretty big SVG components, and especially on like older devices, it can start to crawl. You can get pretty fancy by like the mouse event handling is a great example where we had a visualization that had something like 1,000 to 3,000 data points on it. And on really old iOS devices, it just, the performance wasn't there. So we got a little tricky, wrote a little container element and implemented our own like mouse handling as a way to fix the performance there. So you can like, if you really want to get into it, you can get the performance down yourself by doing some neat little tricks or some neat hacks. But for simple visualizations, if you're not going too crazy, I think the browser performance is totally there these days. It works really nice.
Awesome, thank you.
And then I know Jay says he has a question, but there's a couple of questions in the chat. So I just want to ask those as well. So Chow is saying, if you use SVG file with template URL, do you still need to prefix SVG elements with SVG?
Yeah, so it's just a really good habit to get into because there's a little bit of a developer user experience hiccup that you're going to run into occasionally. If you forget that SVG namespace, sometimes Angular is going to choose to draw parts of your template or your Angular components as an SVG unknown element, and you get no browser error that this has occurred, and things just aren't showing up anymore. And so it's really good habit to just always use that SVG prefix everywhere when you're going down this path. That way you don't fall into that really tricky to debug situation where it's like, hey, I think this all looks right, but I'm not getting any errors and nothing's showing up anymore.
And then as a second question, Chow asks, is it easy to redraw on resize? Or might mean or.
Yeah. So in this example, since I was using an observable to get my list of movies, it would already dynamically redraw as the list of movies changed. And the Angular CDK has this really nice set of tools to actually watch for like screen size changes. It has the ability to observe breakpoints, how those change. And you can use this same technique, mixing in additional observables to calculate or change how you're drawing or computing that scale function. So all you need to do is pull in some additional observables and you've got the data you need to dynamically recompute your chart.
Cool. And then Jay, I think you said you had a question, right?
Yeah, I did. I know I used this back in, well, not exactly what you did, but I used something like this back in like Angular 9 or something, and it wasn't quite as fleshed out and just had some problems rendering the SVGs, and they required mocking and stuff. Like, it was messy. I just disregarded it. Is that still the case, or am I not going to have problems now that it's kind of a little bit more mature?
So we heavily snapshot test our SVG charts using Jest today, and I'm not aware of our developers experiencing any of those problems. So I think it works.
Great.
But if you try it out and you run into problems, I'd be really curious to see it and maybe help you work through it.
Cool. Thanks a lot.
All right. Any last questions then?
Gift had a question, and his question was about, I don't see him on the chat anymore, so I'll ask his question unless Gift, you want to jump on and ask it yourself. But it was, a lot of people answered it for him, just like that the data should be independent of how your chart deals with it. But I just ask you, you can use WebSockets with this, right?
Absolutely. Yep. Since it was observable from the top, you could replace that with any observable you wanted to. And since we're using inputs and setters beneath that, it will all dynamically recompute itself as your source data changes. So where I work, we attach data in an NgRx store to our visualizations. And so when we handle actions from WebSockets or GraphQL requests, that data updates in the store, that gets passed down to our components, and the chart dynamically recalculates.
That's beautiful. I love reactive programming.
Cool. Okay. If there's not any other final questions, I'll give you a little bit more time here. But if there's not, then we have our trivia game to play for prizes.
Yes.
Okay.
Free stuff.
All right. It is. And by the way, are you guys enjoying Kahoot? We've played it now a few times, but are you guys enjoying it? Do you want to keep doing it? Give me a
Send us your feedback if you want to
Yes.
afterwards too. Just if you have ideas for different ways to compete for prizes, let me know. If you
Okay.
think prizes,
Now we're getting
care
some
about
good
prizes, you
feedback.
can tell me that too. We want to hear.
Cool. Okay. Then let me. I'm gonna I
No,
know.
we do not partake
Gladi-
in American gladiator violence. Although American Ninja Warrior might be worth it.
Oh, God. That would be pretty tricky.
Again, not everybody in this chat is in America. So, yeah. Have to be the Olympics.
All right. Here is your code, everybody.
Hey, I can actually participate this time.
Am I the only one that can hear the music, or can you hear the music?
I think we can't unless you actually let us hear it. So.
Okay.
Oh,
I
no,
love how they have
when we go to the lobby, though, we'll be able to hear it, I think.
Oh, will you? Okay. Let's do reggae. Nice.
And even the speakers are allowed to participate because you're only going to know your questions. And plus, they're not like your questions, they're Brooke's questions. So, and
This
I
could
helped a
be
little
bad.
bit. I helped a little bit. So if the question sucks, it was probably my question.
Whatever.
You know, it's bad that there's not only are there like a dozen Michaels, but there's at least 2 Michael D's.
Yeah. That's true.
Hey, just a reminder to everybody, if we don't know who you are, we can't send you a prize. So, like, it's all cool if everybody wants to be Mike on the call. And I know, like, most of you are Mikes. So, but I'm just saying, also, we need a way to contact you. So here's the thing. Come message us on either Brooke's Twitter, my Twitter, or the Angular Community Twitter, which is Angular_Meetup. And if you message any of those places, we'll be able to deliver your prize to you. There was somebody who didn't get their prize last time because I just had no idea how to contact them. I literally went through all of the people with the same name in the call to try to find the person. And the ones that I contacted and that responded said, I'm not the one, but I'll take it anyways. And I was really appreciative that they didn't like just say I am the one.
Yeah.
So
Eric's Twitter handle is ERIK_Slack. And then you can find me at Jedi Bravery on Twitter. Either place works. Any more takers? There's Eric.
Who's Jeff Cross? I'm pretty sure he's not here. I checked.
I will claim responsibility for Jeff Cross.
I wondered if it was you. You both have beards. That's how I guessed.
Pretty sus.
Pretty sus.
All right, last chance.
Did you all know that Frosty started like a monthly game of Among Us that y'all can join in on? It was pretty fun last time. Just a chance to murder Frosty over and over again. It's really fun.
I have never played Among Us before because I always thought it was like something you had to install like through Steam. Didn't realize it was an iPhone app.
Yeah,
No idea. And it's free.
It's pretty easy to do too.
Okay, here we go. I love the countdowns. Another name for auxiliary routes is secondary routes, secondary ports, secondary selectors, or secondary outlets. Oh, nice.
We tricked everyone.
We did. Wahaha.
Another thing is, these questions are made on the fly, people.
Yeah.
That is how ninja we are at the Angular Community Meetup.
Oh my gosh. Oh, Mr. Dowden takes the lead.
It's also based on time. So
It
the
is.
faster you go, the higher your score is going to be.
What was the precursor to capacitor? Was it Corona, Aurora, Cordova, or Primera? I also love the pictures, by the way. It was fun to find pictures. And Cahoots sucks at pictures.
Yeah, their pictures weren't that great.
I typed in some things and it was showing me like foot massages and it was really random stuff. Cordova, nice. Nice. Oh, Mr. Dowden kept his place.
Oh, but look, my friend Cher, she's getting up there.
Nice.
Cher and Steven.
And Gene.
You're all my friends now, but
Capacitor allows you to ship all of the following except PWA, Android app, iOS app, or Windows Store app. This is my Android, by the way.
I like it. An Android, it's a telephone.
Yeah, makes sense, right?
That's not an Android, that's a robot.
It's an Android robot.
Close enough.
Windows Web Store, nice. Okay. Oh, Mr. Dowden was debunked.
Oh, I wasn't fast enough.
Oh, but look at that. Look how close it is. And Cher and Gene. Wow, everybody kind of stayed. Usually there's like more movement, but nice.
I think people are getting good at this.
Yeah. Okay, true or false? Mobile responsive Angular applications have all of the same capabilities as Angular apps built with capacitor. That's my capacitor.
That looks like a lightsaber. Oh,
I was
actually,
going to say, it does look like a lightsaber.
Well, it was from the Bad Batch, but that is not a lightsaber.
I did watch that episode. I immediately knew what you were talking about.
Nice.
That is a good TV show. I'm a big Star Wars fan.
It is too much fun. Yeah. False. Ooh, we got you guys. Mr. Dowden comes back for the lead. I don't know which mic this is. So
That's me.
I don't know who me is.
Me. The mill.
Okay.
That was basically what I had to go through in high school, was the mill, because there were too many Michaels there too.
Ah, okay.
I thought Michael Dowden was playing twice.
Oh, there you go.
Nope.
Okay, another true or false. Auxiliary routes are well documented in the Angular docs. What do you think, J Bell?
For the
I
recording,
really hope everyone gets this right.
the recording no shade, okay? No shade.
Yeah.
Angular team.
Yes, no shade whatsoever.
Documentation is very difficult.
Fact.
Actually, that's one of our episodes coming up on the Angular Experience podcast. So
It
check
totally
it out.
is with Dave Shevitz.
Yeah,
That's
he's
a
the
good
Wizard of
episode.
Docs.
Yes. Oh, it's so close. I love this. Okay, true or false again. Jay Bell wrote a NPM package to help solve some of the pain points of using auxiliary routes. Jay, this is the Jaybird just for you.
Our
Nice.
admin person here calls me like Blue Jay, so that's very
Oh, there you go.
accurate.
Nice. I get called Babbling Brook sometimes if it makes you feel better.
Don't know why.
Yeah.
I call her Storybrooke sometimes, but that one's even better.
I'm always like saying, tell stories, tell more stories. Okay.
Man, I'm really
Oh.
trying my hardest, but I just can't get up on this leaderboard.
Sometimes
Me
it's like
neither.
if you start low, it just is too hard to get back up there. I don't know how they maybe the game tricks us. True or false? Capacitor makes Ionic obsolete.
Uh-oh.
I do have to say though, Game Boys are not obsolete yet.
Nope.
So that
They
picture
never
is
will
not
be.
accurate. No,
Nice.
totally not.
Apparently
Ever.
you can revamp them nowadays.
Oh, can you?
There's 4 people throwing some shade at you there, Mike.
I think I need to dust off my job application.
Staying the same. Okay, SVGs are YAML-based vector images, HTML-based, XML-based, or JSON-based.
I don't see an option for
YAML-based.
terrible.
This is. Did you
Yeah.
notice
Fooled me.
the picture was yams? Because when you type in YAML, it gives you yams. Oh,
I love it.
nice. Oh,
Oh, I'm in 8th place.
Whoa.
You guys better
Remember-
watch out. I'm catching.
yeah.
it's Michael D and Michael D neck and
I
neck.
know, that's what I was saying. Look at that.
Dun dun dun. All right. 3 more left. All of the following are charting libraries except D3, AG chart, high charts, and Microiron's reactive charts.
Y'all said last time that the questions were too hard, so I had to put some. We had to make up some easy ones.
I was gonna say, what's your definition of a library here? That's pretty sketchy. He's got a GitHub repository for it. Doesn't that make it the library these days?
Is React a library? Or is
It's
it
React
framework?
library.
Now, don't shoot the question makers.
Uh-oh, Eric. Eric.
I will take my own prize.
Oh, gosh. He's just trying to see how fast he can do it. You can use SVGs instead of HTML for your Angular components. True or false?
Oh man, I put the wrong answer.
Uh-oh. It's too bad they can't let you undo it, you know?
Yeah, right.
You would lose your speed, but still you could.
That's what I get for trying to go like faster than everybody else. Michael Dowden's got his
Perfect
character
1,000.
going, and DeMille here too.
Well, it even put the fire by.
Well done.
What does that even mean?
Well done, Michael D.
It's a streak.
4.9.
Yeah, it's a streak of correct answers.
I feel like this is like
Wow.
this is it. This is the last question, so it's going to come down to this.
Uh-oh, it's close.
No pressure.
Pressure is
Don't
on.
worry.
True or false? Developers should never build their own chart libraries.
What do you think, Ryan? Mike?
False.
I dispute the correct
false.
answer.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Okay,
Okay.
this developer should never.
Drum roll. 3rd place, Stephen. 2nd place, Mr. Dowden. So Michael D. Oh, it's a spotlight even. How
Oh,
fun.
it might be
Oh,
shared.
wow.
It is
Might be
Michael.
shared.
Michael
There we
DeMille.
go.
Nice.
It's like, oh, bouncing. Oh, and Gene. Hey, Gene came up on 5th. Nice.
Where did I place, Brooke?
Okay, how does it?
Good job, Gene.
Did I beat Eric? That's all I care about.
Back to podium. Does it not show? How do we show more than just the top 3?
I don't even remember. There's a spot, but it's fine. We had.
I know I can look. Maybe I can just look here. We had what? Sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, what were the prizes again?
We can give, except for that Steven won. So Steven, do you already have a Thinkster?
What'd you say? You're muted.
You're muted, Steven.
I never did get the Thinkster prize, but I'm fine. I've won enough times. Let somebody else like one of the others.
Steven
There's
just likes
enough
to
people
compete.
here.
You know,
I just like to compete.
Competition fresh. You know?
Steven, I'll tell you what. We'll give you a Thinkster membership and someone else, so we'll do four prizes.
Generous.
That is very generous.
Sponsors.
I want to see the results, and I'm not sure.
Reports?
I just want to know if I beat Jay Bell or not.
Oh gosh.
Even though I got
literally
one
all I care about.
Okay, hey everybody, this is like, we're gonna do this thing called the Angular Arena again. So just kind of a heads up. That's super fun. It's like an evening of just Angular trivia. So keep that in mind.
Last time
I think if you hit the top one, that one where you were at.
Oh, was it? Should I go back there?
Yeah, you hit that top one right there. Open that one. And players, probably. There's a players on the summary on the far right. I don't know. Yeah, right there. Maybe.
Or on the top. Oh, there you go.
There you go. Okay, it does. I thought it was just
going to show. Gotta go kiss a pig now.
Right, don't expose any more than 10 people.
I can do show more. Oh, don't show more. Okay.
Don't
okay.
show. We don't want to expose us people in
We
the
don't
bottom.
want any embarrassed.
That's true. That's true.
I don't want everyone to know that they beat me.
If only I would have gotten one of my own questions right.
Now that's
If
it.
only.
Who gets what prize? I'm trying to remember.
Okay, so Steven and Cher and, well, Michael kind of already has a Thinkster membership because he's a Thinkster author. So, and well,
That's
Michael,
okay.
message me because I have some options for you. Just message me. I'll get you something. And then, yeah, Michael D. You can either email me at bravery@ngconf.org or just do Jedi Bravery, and I'll get you a ticket to the Reliable Web Summit.
Cool.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's going to be like, seriously, you guys, looking at the talks, we've not made final selections yet, but it's going to be good. So.
And that's a conference you can bring your React friends to and not feel bad about it.
It's true. Yeah. And Vue and all of that. So it should be good. But, well, we are. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so this is another one that the NgConf people are putting on. You guys are doing, right?
It is. Yeah. But
a lot of you guys.
It's not just Angular. Like NgConf is always Angular specific. This is more of a broad spectrum.
Very cool.
So it really will be. But a lot of the speakers you'll see will be, I think, similar. So, and again, we haven't made final selections, but just kind of looking at what's available. But then at the same time, there's a lot of great new speakers and they'll have some great new conversations to start. So I think it's going to be really, really exciting.
Now, I just want to put in a plug for our next event.
Oh, right here.
It is actually not the Americas event. It is the Europe Africa event. And this is a brand new series that we've put on. And we will be getting to Asia and Australia as soon as we possibly can. But this time zone, it has been needed. So organizing that are going to be the Michael Madsen, which several of you probably know as an organizer of this meetup from the past, and also Duncan Faulkner. And we're lining up such great speakers. We've got, just name drop a little bit, but we got Manfred Steyer talking on his micro front end and module federation. So yeah, if you've got friends who would love to come to this meetup, but it's just they're sleeping at this time zone, yeah, let's invite them to go to that event. And then after that,
that's actually wrong. It says Mountain Time. That should be British standard.
No, one's right. That one's for our meetup.
Oh, no, you're right.
Series. So the next series event, and you can find all of this on angularcommunity.net, but the next event is June 15th for the Africa, Europe. And that one is 6 p.m. BST. Okay, which is I think British Standard Time.
Yeah. So that's 11 a.m. Mountain Standard, which is pretty doable. So it's not like it's crazy hours.
Brian Love is going to be speaking at that next event. So if y'all are fans of Brian, like me, go check that out. And then we've got on June 22nd, we're going to have B-Man. Anybody know B-Man? Brahm, he runs the Angular community, not affiliated really. It's just a group, but the Angular community Discord. And that guy is incredible. And then we have, and I need to still ask him how it's, I've asked him and he hasn't told me. It's Donanjay.
Okay.
So anyway, we got some of that coming up, but they're still turning in their talk. So you'll know that. So anyway, come back next time. That's all I got to say.